Good day, good people. Here with one of my favorite people, Brandon Lewis of the Painters Academy. Bringing him here selfishly because I know we're going to get a lot of value. I'm going to do my best to extract those secrets out of you, Mr. Lewis. Um, Educator, leader of a wonderful coaching organization. Really someone that I admire. You blew it away at Contractor Impact. Nice to have you here, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Glad to be here, man. It's always good to see your youthful, smiling face.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So let's dive into it. I want to hear it in your words. I don't want the simple. Who are you? I want to know why you're called to impact the painting community, even some contractors. But I'd like to start there. I think that would be really great.
Well, I came from humble beginnings. I grew up. My dad could not read or write. Had never been to school a day in his life. I will often say you can take the boy out of the trailer, but you can't take the trailer out of the boy. And luckily, he insisted that I get an education. I went on and got a marketing degree and a master's in business administration. Worked in politics and nonprofits for a long period of time for U.S. Senate, U.S. House, state and local races. Wrote a book called How to Raise Money for Political Office. But then I knew I wanted to do something with equity. And I looked around and I thought I had found a cheap version of a painting franchise. It was a license group, and it turned out to be a fake. Turned out to be a non-existent, no systems, no processes, no support thing that I got into. And after about 6 months and figuring that out, I had to make it work on my own or either
Wow.
embarrass myself in front of everyone else. And I'd ran through a bunch of money doing a lot of things wrong. And I discovered a few things, a few mentors, direct response marketing, a few operations tools, and was able to build on that and, built $1 million company with about 16 to 20 folks working. This is back when charge rates were $38, not $78. And over the last decade, I've coached 500 painters in 6 different countries with a variety of programs. And of course, our 9th annual Painting Profit Summit is the 2nd largest gathering of independents in the nation. And we do a purchasing group, online services, and a variety of things inside the painting sphere. And I just love helping our guys. You watch them, Tanner, they're $300,000 and in Strugglesville when you meet them. And a handful of years later, they're at $3 million plus, making over $1 million a year. And you're like, that is an amazing transformation.
Wow.
And so being a part of that's always fun.
Your beginnings obviously didn't stem from painting, but I know that like many others, you saw an opportunity to add the component of customer service, add the component of really corporate behavior in a small business that people appreciate. I think, you instilled in me when we spoke the importance of reactivation and some of these things that it's almost like you kind of like are telling everyone, stick to the principles, stop getting fancy. The same stuff is going to work in 10 years as it did, 10 years before. Tell me about some of the things that are tried and true that you stand by to this day that aren't the sexy, shiny objects, but the things that actually make an impact.
Well, there are prerequisites, right? I think I have done now somewhere between 2,500 and 2,700 assessments. It's really not worth going back and counting anymore. Well over a calendar year, I've been on the phone an hour at a time with painting contractors to see, like, what are they doing? What are their struggles? What are their worries? What are their fears and concerns? And so often people will tell me how it is. And I'm like, you have no idea how it is. How many people have you talked to? I mean, how do you qualify your opinion about what's going on in the industry? And it's typically, emotions and gut instinct.
Sure.
But even it doesn't matter how small they are or even how large they are. I cannot tell you how many large painting contractors, Tanner, I speak with that are unprofitable. I mean, just remarkably unprofitable. In many cases, running $1 million business, making less money than they would make if they just painted by the hour.
Yeah.
By themselves.
Yeah.
You don't need 10 people.
Quantity is not always quality.
No, you don't need 10 people to be this broke, buddy. You can do this by yourself at home.
It's hard to go back. I think, on that point, as a driven individual, you're on a hell path, of just, like getting it done. And it's really hard to be humble and say, I've been building, but it's been in the wrong direction.
Well, I would say they're trade people in general and painters specifically probably have some of the if we ever run out of pride on planet Earth and people are feeling really down, I think we could probably tap into the painting contractors and just fuel the whole
Yeah.
globe because people, I mean, it does not matter how bad it is. Some folks
You
will not
know,
seek
go to my
advice.
group, Oh yeah.
They will not seek advice. They will not look for counsel, even though it says in Proverbs, with many counselors, plans succeed, and without them they fail. But going back to your original question, when these people aren't making money, and to back up a little bit, I think sometimes we can get the wrong view of what the industry is like by looking around at the folks that self-select to show up at business improvement events. I mean, that's the tippy top. Now, that's stratified pretty big.
It is.
But they have taken and I've done so many assessments over the years, and because I move in these circles, I will often see people, giving advice that I know are broke based upon their financials, which is always a strange thing. And of course, I'm sworn to secrecy, so I can only be quiet and not try to go into the room. But nonetheless, the average painter is about 1.3 people, and other trades may have more or less, but folks aren't doing real well in our industry. You can look outside the paint store and you'd think you'd see limousines and BMWs because you can make a lot of money in this business, but rather there's a lot of broken down trucks and vans and folks that are living paycheck to paycheck with zero equity and no hope of selling a business. And but it's a shame because it doesn't have to be that way at all, because there is an abundance of wealth to be earned in any trade organization if you'll just get out there and get it.
And it's as simple as applying knowledge. And I think being creative in how you find work is always going to be a topic. You mentioned that you wanted to talk about a topic that you felt was missing in my Rolodex of information, which I believe is commercial work, which I call it confidence, because when that schedule gets filled up for 3+ weeks, it's always a confidence boost. It's like, okay, I can hire that guy, or okay, I have predictability. I can take a little risk now. Like, I love the idea of supplementing residential business with commercial work. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear some strategies that you've uncovered that could help us get there.
Well, the first off, why would you even want to get into commercial if you didn't have an interest? Now, most people do. At least I can't speak for all trades, but most painters, like, I wish I could have some more commercial work. I rarely ever hear anybody say, "Oh, I don't want any of that." I mean, typically, if it's repaint work, they've had some experience. Maybe they've done a doctor's office or a dentist's office, or they lucked upon a warehouse. They made a lot of money, and it was pretty easy, and it wasn't much more complicated than
Sure.
residential. But a few things quickly from an interior standpoint, there's a glut in certain sectors of interior work in the middle of the winter, and home services is highly seasonal. Almost all home services, because people just quit spending money. It gets colder. It takes out the external. People don't want you inside their house when they're cooped up in it. And so you have a lot of shutdown work. You have a lot of budgets being released at the beginning of the year and being spent at the end of the year. The transaction sizes are so much larger. The margins are the same or better. And if you find a good client, it could mean hundreds of thousands, $50,000, $200,000 a year with relative consistency. And once you get in with one vertical,
Yeah.
if you have some sense, you can go find other folks and just duplicate what you have done there over and over again. And although there are some barriers to entry, they're not, they're marketing and sales barriers. Once you're inside an account, it's not like you're completely insulated, but you're pretty close to it. And we'll talk about some of those reasons why as we get along in this content.
I've always been strict residential. I think that comes from a safe place, but more so keeping the standard. And I've slowly allowed a few certain commercial jobs come through, one of which a recent experience in the last 3 months. We have this project manager that we've built such a strong relationship with that she becomes an advocate for us on the board. It makes her look good, I think, because we take her relationship so seriously to the point where if she wants something estimated, we drop everything, we go. If we have a scope of work, the estimate's delivered within 24 hours. And I think for me, it's making sure that we just don't get comfortable and have this expectation that we're always going to get hired, but just treating the relationship like it's a new relationship every single time. I think she appreciates it. And we've been fortunate enough to paint a lot of buildings, things that fit our expertise, but it's been great.
Well, and it's often the same, right? I mean, when you're painting commercial, it's walls and doors and windows on the inside. It's trim. I mean, aside from manufacturing and some industrial environments, I mean, it's like 80% the same
Right.
as residential. The outsides are a little taller. You might have to have a bigger ladder. You might have to have a boom lift from time to
Yep,
time.
yep.
But there's this magic word that I always tell folks they can use, and that is no. And so if you start prospecting for commercial and somebody's like, I want you to paint the Space Needle, you can say, no, we can't do that. We're not equipped for that, but we will paint the gift shop in the Space
There you
Needle, and
go.
we can
Right,
paint
right.
the stuff at the ground floor of the Space Needle and maybe the stairwells, but we can't paint the top of the Space Needle. You're going to have to call somebody else for that. And so you can always say no. It kind of reminds me when you talk to people about lifting weights, they always say, well, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. I'm like, buddy, if you wake up one day and you accidentally look like a bodybuilder, you'd be the first one ever. This stuff doesn't sneak up on you. And neither does commercial prospecting. It's a little challenging. It's a little difficult. It is harder to get than you think. But once you've built some momentum, it's hard to lose.
I want to break into it. What are some strategies to consistently predict outcomes, to get leads, to be involved in the conversations? Because I anticipate that if word of mouth is strong in home service, let's say that's the case, then commercial work, word of mouth is probably a lot stronger because I think in some cases the job is on the line if you make a bad decision for some. So I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I approach it. Is I really want to go to bat for anyone that wants us to do work. So love to hear some strategy.
Well, first off, you have to ask yourself a fundamental question, and that is, do you have the prerequisites for commercial? What would those be? And we talk about these all the time. Production rates, good God, get DripJobs and use it. That's the most common question on
Sure.
your Facebook group with I don't know, tens of thousands of
Sure.
painters in it. How much would you charge to paint this? If you have to ask those questions of any human, you do not need to get into commercial. You got to do job costing. You got to have some kind of basic tools for managing your crew leaders, project management and scheduling. If you can, have some kind of performance-based pay so that it aligns with profitability. And then you have to have a persuasive sales process. If you're a fisherman and if all you have is like a flat bottom boat and a rod and reel from Kmart, you don't need to go down and try to whale. You can't bring a whale in the boat with a small rig and a tiny pole. You can't do it. You'd have to have a completely different setup. And the last thing you want to do is spend a bunch of time, energy, and effort prospecting in commercial only to discover that you can't handle the jobs, you don't have the operations or the basic systems in place, and then you finally get somebody who says, hey, come look at this, and your sales system is a pet the dog, email, a PDF sales system, and you can't close it. What's the point of going after
Yeah.
these things with large sales cycles and huge risk involved depending on the size, although most of the jobs are smaller when you first get them. So the first step would be just making sure you've got prerequisites. And one final one that I would add, and people may disagree with me on this, but I've seen it bear out. When people have a large client list of residential people, Tanner, and they do not communicate with them via email, mail, text, phone, customer appreciation events, anything like that, it's almost radio silence, or they have some kind of mechanical automaton that occasionally pings them with it's okay, right? You can do some of that, but this is a big sale, right? This is
Yeah.
highly customized.
Sure.
Almost would be interesting to see what AI can do with messages based upon the client relationship. But nonetheless, if you've never done that before, if you've never ran a campaign to your own in-house list, sending it to a list of strangers is going to be uncomfortable. So I often recommend, because the first thing I'm going to recommend is that you, or the third step I'm going to recommend is running a multi-step multimedia campaign, is that you first do it with your own list so you can get the mechanics in your brain so that you can figure out, okay, how do I write persuasive copy? What type of sequence do I need to do? What kind of offer do I need to have? What kind of theme do I need to run? Run it in the safest audience that you've already identified, the decision maker and who loves you, and you have a reason and an excuse to contact. Then that way, when you go out and talk to stone cold strangers who you're interrupting them and their day with no prior relationship, well, now you've had some experience doing this. And so those are some of the prerequisites that I would put out there for folks before they try to go after commercial. And of course, to be, financially stable. If you got $10 in the bank, don't go looking for something that's got a 90-day payout, 60-day payout, 30-day payout. I mean, I talk to people all the time. I need to get commercial. How much money you got in your operating account? $5,000. You cannot do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those are some of the prerequisites.
I've heard a lot of stories of people without the appropriate systems in place where that commercial job almost took them out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I've seen it take them out.
like physically, financially, and emotionally. Like that one job that you just took because you've never seen a number that big. Someone gave you a shot, and it turned out to be a lot more than you can chew. Which I've seen this too, where okay, I got the big job. Now I got to scramble and hire the help for it. Like I can't think of a worse scenario, right? Where you're making hiring decisions like that. I'm sure you have plenty of stories as well, but that's, I've heard it a lot. What you're saying is very true.
It happens. And just to clarify, guys, I'm not talking about new construction. I should have said that at the outset. I think I have said
you can get away with almost anything in new construction,
Well, yeah, but you can get away with almost anything in new construction except making money.
True.
Commercial new construction, if I talk to 20 people that are exclusively commercial in painting, one of them's making money at anywhere close to the rate of residential repaints. And they got all this overhead and admin and risk and slow pay and a billion pieces of paperwork to fill out. And they're fighting with their client, quote unquote, and there's no equity. I've never seen a commercial new construction business sold. So when I'm talking about this stuff today, I'm not talking about working for GCs. I'm talking about working for commercial painters or commercial maintenance accounts. The second thing, Tanner, is building your list of prospects. The first rule of politics, publishing, and in my opinion, painting, is building the list. That's the first rule, build the list. And I have a political and a publishing background. I publish our state's largest conservative news alternative. And so to me, all this stuff is something that's like critically important. It's not, oh, I'm a painter, so therefore I have to go do this marketing and sales stuff. It's like, to me, I look at a painting business as almost marketing and sales stuff. And then it's just got a man and a van attached to it. And that's how we monetize the relationship with the list.
Sure.
And a lot of people could stand to think about that.
Like
so
that.
Now, first step, and I bet you could do this. I bet you could do this. I bet you'd have just a ton of them in there that you would think that aren't in there. The first thing, review your database. Just sit down in front of it. Now, some of you have huge databases, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people. Some of you have a few hundred. And go through there and just see it. If you've done a warehouse job, if you've done some kind of property management job, we just did this one shopping center. We never heard from them. Well, we never contacted them again. Like, there are people in there that probably are still buying painting services, but just 100%. Quit buying from you. And then ask them for referrals. And some of you even have, when somebody typically says we're 80-20 commercial or something like that, anything more than about 5%, Tanner, they have usually got like a property management company or an assisted living facility or some account that's putting in $50,000 or $100,000 a year into their business. And the thought never dawns on them to go, I bet I could go find another one of those. I bet I could ask this person who they know who does this as a facility manager to do that. And then the second place to start is online searches. For example, Tanner, where are you based again?
Ocala, Florida.
What's the closest municipality that's of a decent size next to Ocala?
Like in terms of a municipality,
like a city, like your closest city hub.
Orlando, probably.
Okay. So if you went to Orlando and you just typed in commercial property managers, Orlando, that's all you'd have to do. Orlando, Florida. You could probably in 30 or 40 minutes by searching commercial property management companies, come up with 40 or 50 prospects. Most of the time, especially if you're in a more urban area, it's got their name, it's got their email address, it's got their phone number, their cell phone number, their mailing address. I mean, these are like bees in a hive. You can go by and see these humans. Assisted living, private schools, these are all very safe, very easy places to go after. Many of our guys go after fuel tank yards.
There you go.
It's just, it's a big, simple painting job. And of course, you got to get a lift, and there's some specialty products. But I mean, they don't care what it looks like. They just want it to be covered. Like, it can be a terrible paint job. As long as it's consistently covered, they're happy. They're just trying to keep the thing from rusting, right?
Sure.
And there are a variety of other HOAs, hospital systems. They're all over the place, right? Large employers, manufacturers, almost any city of any size has some sort of industrial park that is set up for larger manufacturers with the power and the water and the infrastructure that they need and close to transit. And so if you just look those things up and you come up with 50 or 60 names and contact information. Now, sometimes you can get the full contact information. Sometimes you can't. And then also organizational lists. If you have a BOMA chapter, Building Owners and Managers of America, I was an associate member of the year here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, participating with that organization. You have other assisted living, HOA organizations, fuel organizations, and they get together and they're facility managers. It's like a room full of prospects, like huge prospects. And if you join the organization, and many times if you just advertise with the organization, you can get their client list, which is worth solid gold. And you can also purchase lists from a variety. If you just type in, B2B commercial database purchase, like there'll be 15 different vendors on there. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and you can find them. And even if the data, Tanner, isn't perfect, if you put in something like 50,000 square feet buildings that are over this age, that are in these sectors, who have the title plant manager, facility manager, maintenance director, and a few others, you'll get a list of 300 or 400 names. Maybe only 100 of them are what you would want to target. And then now you've got a very small group of people that, with a very limited amount of time and a very small budget, you can go out and freaking get jobs. And so it all starts with building the list first.
The perspective I have is the way I approach, or I used to approach, getting a job. I never had a problem getting a job, Brandon. It was for me, because the strategy was so different than what the normal strategy was, right? So they'd say, go online and apply. Well, we all know what happens when you go online and apply. You don't get contacted, right? I think all of us as business owners know that we're looking for the standouts. Even to this day, hiring painters, you call us a couple times, I'm looking at your resume, right?
Exactly.
You send an email with a little thought into it about being thankful for the application, I'm putting an asterisk by your name, right? And that's because busy people are busy. So in the same way, I like to teach people to align your offer with the customer's needs and wants. I'm sure you follow something similar. We got to think about these property managers and their pain points, right? Like, imagine getting the pamphlet on your desk saying, hey, you need to get the building painted, right? And, at the end of the day, I think it's try to make it easy for these people by being an advocate. I don't think anybody's doing that in your area. It's a very rare thing to have a painting company that checks all the boxes, like you said, the back end stuff, the production rates, and the eagerness to pursue business like this. It sounds simple, but it's simple.
It is. And, there's an old saying, if you want to understand why John Smith buys what John Smith buys, you have to see the world through John Smith's eyes. And these guys many of them, not all, but many of them are sitting in a basement.
Yeah.
Their phone constantly rings. It's always complaints. The boiler's not working. There's an odor on floor 3. We got a leak over here. The AC's not working. Whatever it is, right? They're just constantly firefighting. Not all of them, but most of them. And when you show up with a solution, when you show up in their office, when you drop off something catchy, when you mail them, email them, call them, you are probably the only painter or home service provider or commercial service provider that has contacted them in years.
Hmm.
And often when they do get contacted, and this is something else we're going to go into in a moment, they get contacted once. And if they blow somebody off, even like with the lightest breeze, they never come back. They
Wow.
assume if I have been told no today, that it is no forever, and that is not at all the case.
Wow. And that's usually the case with the normal follow-ups for residential customers as well. you
Yes.
know, and that's a passion of mine. You see that DripJobs there. That's what it was born from, was knowing that people need to be nudged. They need to be
Yeah.
reminded. I can't tell you how many times I've had an employee or potential employee do that to me. Like, it's like, hey, did you have a chance to review my application? Like,
Exactly.
and I'm thinking, no, I haven't. I'm busy, so I love the mindset there.
Well, so we got a list, right?
Yeah,
We've got a list. We've thought a little bit. One thing to always think about with your marketing to commercial people is they are residential. They're just homeowners.
sure.
They leave their home. They go to the office. They don't sleep under the desk. They're not from another planet. They have the same fears, worries, and concerns as
Yeah,
Susie
yeah.
homeowner does. But they've got an additional layer on top of it, as you mentioned, and that is they've got a boss that they want to please, and they've got stakeholders that they want to please, which are typically tenants or customers.
Right.
And their whole thing is, how can I get this within budget? And how can I, dear God, how can we do this job without anybody complaining, without there being a big mess, without somebody with a
Right.
skullet and a tank top out blaring free birds, smoking doobie behind the warehouse? Like, how can we get this thing painted without embarrassment,
Yeah.
accidents,
Yeah.
and decent communication so that it's easy for me, right?
Sure.
And so we run what we call multi-step, multi-medium campaigns. And, it's where I learned how to do this is on political campaigns. When you're trying to get somebody's vote, you got to mail them, you got to email them, you got to text them, you got to call them, you got to go by and knock on their door, you got to remind them of who you are, you got to get them out to vote, you got to put them on a constituent newsletter list. I mean, it's all about that constant communication.
Yeah.
And the same thing with your targets. Once you get them, mail them a letter, email them, ask them if they got it. And then text them, ask them if they got it. If you don't hear from them, call them. If they don't get back to you, show up at their office. We have a variety of different campaigns. We have one called the Foot in the Door campaign. We get a little tiny foot. I kid you not. This is so dorky. But we get a foot. It's like a big foam foot, and we put the logo of the company. I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. And we show up, and it's got socks in it and
I
toenail
love it.
polish and all kind of that ridiculous
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And you've got to shake people by the lapels if you want them to pay attention. And the same old corporate throw up is not going to get anybody's attention. It needs to be personal, funny, themed. We have a naughty or nice campaign we run during Christmas where we mail them like a peppermint or a big lump of coal. And it says, it just depends. I mean, you've not called me back. We've got more straightforward, like free painter for a day offers. We've got that we run. What else is another good one? A facility audit. You start sending those things out about this time of year because they have to put their budgets together usually. And you say, hey, I'll come out and I'll audit your entire facility. I'll give you a written report of everything you need. Would it be okay if I met and talked to you about that? And the professional ones are like, oh, thank God. I always thought that was kind of because it's just a damn estimate, right?
Yeah.
But if you pitch it differently,
Right.
it's an estimate in a different format, right?
Sure.
And we send them an example of what the audit looks like, and it is pretty impressive. And so there's a variety of offers. But honestly, Tanner, if you just showed up at their office and did nothing else, nothing, none of this other crap I've just mentioned, if you just drove around in your car and went to places where you think your ideal client, and you showed up and just said, hey, what is the name of that guy? I can't remember, that does the facility management around here. What's his name? Oh, you mean Pete? Yeah, Pete. Is Pete in here today? And you just handwrite, can I get Pete's number? If you just walk around that dumb and just collect numbers, and if you put it on a piece of notebook paper and just freaking kept calling people, you would get work.
Right.
You would get work. So we got to run those campaigns, and they have to be unique. And as you mentioned, the whole reason DripJobs was born is because like people are dumb, deaf, and blind to what you're trying to sell them. And you have to hit them over and over again.
And they're inundated with information.
Yes.
And the attention span is going. I mean, someone will put in a Facebook lead, and then we call them 2 minutes later, and they don't know why we're calling. because they were doom scrolling and clicking. And so,
Some of these people vote.
Some of them vote. It's a problem. You got to be aware. So, I mean, there's so much there, man. I love the tactic, the grassroots approach of putting your boots on the ground and going to get it. Which, there's no negatives to that, whether it builds grit or it generates dollars. Each are valuable.
Well, there are just a handful of other steps. One of them that I think is important is classifying the lead, right?
Sure.
Are they known? Like, and we have like 7 classifications. Do we know their decision maker for sure? Are they a suspected decision maker? Have we met them in person? Have we got contact from them? Have we verified them? Are they now a client? Have we had an appointment with them? Because it's no different than you're basically doing for all extents and purposes. You're a major account salesperson,
right?
I mean, that's the gig you have for the whatever hours you've allocated and money you've allocated. Right. Now you're not going to do it 40 hours a week, although some owners just about do because it's so lucrative. But you got to classify them, and then there are 2 components. Once you figure out who they are, and once you have a conversation with them, they're not always ready to buy. Although you will get some estimate requests immediately, and then those will turn into projects. There's a little longer sales cycle, although not always. Sometimes you just immediately are doing work. I've seen that happen a lot of times too. Right. You need to put those people on a newsletter marketing list along with your residential clients, because at least that way, if you mail and email a newsletter every month, they're going to get hit 24 times. And it is so funny. You will call somebody and they will be so rude and ugly to you. I don't need anything, and don't call me again, and kiss my you know what.
Yeah.
Rude, ugly. And I always told her, put them on the newsletter list anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter. Just put them on the newsletter list.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell these guys, what do you mean? I can't. Yes, just do it. And 3 months, 6 months later, that guy's calling up, and he is the nicest person because now he's got.
I didn't know you did that, right?
Yeah, now he's got a need. Now he's all jovial and jocular because his boss has told him he needs to get a building painted. Right. Or the person leaves, and because facility managers, maintenance managers, property, they move around quite a bit. And so now John left and Susie's in there, and she starts getting the newsletter from you, and she assumes you're the painter. And you almost get to walk into that account because she's got it 2 or 3 months now. She needs painting. And then the other one is personal outreach. And that just has to be calendared. And every month, you need to probably be placing at least one phone call, sending one personal email, and then maybe every other month just dropping by. And this dropping by and consistently communicating with people are how entire industries have been born. You think about pharmaceutical sales. You think about Snap-on tools.
They're still doing it.
Yeah, they're still doing it. It still works. Manufacturer sales reps.
Yeah.
And it's like I talk about this stuff, and people are like, "Oh, that ain't gonna work." I'm like, "It's old as the hill old shoe salesman. People used to sell shoes door to door, and Bibles and brushes and everything else. Like showing up at someone's doorstep, ready to sell, and especially in commercial where the transaction sizes are huge or really big. And then finally, you got to service the accounts, and that has really kind of 2 things. Number one is account penetration. And that has 2 components. Number one is you need to make sure there aren't other things that you could be painting that are being painted, but you're not doing them. Right. And then who else is in that organization that has the authority or the responsibility to get things painted? Or, if you're listening to this, your HVAC or plumbing or whatever, just substitute the word painting for what you do.
Right.
And then asking for referrals. And it's very simple. I'll give you the phrase. Just simply say, hey, listen, I've really enjoyed working with you. Who else do you know in this area that does what you do, that has a similar role, or maybe even some place that you used to work in a different industry who's still doing facility or maintenance management? And just shut up. Well, I know John. I still talk to John, and Earl. I talk to. Okay, how would I reach them? You have their contact information. Would you mind? Could I mention your name when I called? And so most of the time, if you'll talk to your clients, you can get 2 or 3 referrals. Yeah. It's the same way you do when I teach this to guys about recruitment. When you're sitting down and recruiting someone, when they come into your office, even if you don't want to hire them, you need to ask a question like, who's a painter that you have worked with that's still actively painting in the area who you feel like is one of the fastest, most respectable, most honorable painters. And why do you think that? And they'll
Sure.
tell you, oh, Earl is great. He's the best painter ever. And here's how I've worked with him. And he's so good. And he's so honest. He can paint my mother's house. Well, do you still keep up with her? Yes, I do. What's Earl's phone number? And you write it down. Well, who else? And if you can get, and the referrals you tend to get from folks you're interviewing are better than the people you're actually interviewing, because they've gone through their whole Rolodex
Sure.
of people and have mentally picked one person. You don't know
Yeah.
who this person is you're interviewing,
Sure.
but at least you got a recommendation from the one you're
Sure.
talking to. So nonetheless, that act of collecting referrals and servicing the account closes the loop. And then the communication process just starts all over again. But in the end, to summarize this, it's a buy or die game. And that is, you market to them till they buy or till they die. And once you pick your 100 people, 200 people, don't make your list too big, make it manageable. And you just keep marketing to them, and the chips will fall over time. They absolutely will.
Most important thing to notice here is that you can't do any of this until you freed yourself from the business, you know. And that's where I believe Painters Academy comes in. You know, I'd like you to spend a minute or two just telling us about Painters Academy and what you do for the painting contractor.
Well, the first thing I do is slap them around a little bit. I'm just joking. It all starts with a diagnostic, because we got to know what's going on in your business. Anybody who makes recommendations for you without first going through a systematic systems and metrics diagnostic, well, they don't know.
Sure.
And a lot of folks, everything is a nail and they're the hammer, right? It doesn't matter what the situation is with the company. It's all about marketing and sales. Well, the hell it is.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people have a huge backlog of unprofitable work, and they're covered up in debt. And I'm like, no, this is an operations problem first.
Right.
Not that we won't get around to the other stuff. Or you got a hiring and recruitment problem, or you're running off all your painters problem, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so once we figure out what those are, we have a very prescriptive process for how to fix the problem. And there are only, I don't know, maybe 13, 15 essential business systems, and probably just about as many secondary or tertiary systems. And if you get those things organized decently, and if you've got a good methodology, the metrics improve in all those little areas, and it all flows into income. And we do it through a combination of individualized courses. I don't think there's any point in teaching grand strategy to people. I've never seen that be effective. It looks like here's a course on job costing. Here are the tools for job costing.
Right.
Let's figure out how to do this first. Okay, now let's talk about production rates. Now let's talk about how to sell at the rate that you're trying to get professionally. And so we just bolt on all the pieces that are either missing or broken. And then eventually the business just starts to float in an upward trajectory. And then, of course, as soon as it starts to float in an upward trajectory, Tanner, it creates other new and unexpected problems. Because now it's just not you and a bunch of painters. Now it's you and painters and an admin. And then now you got to hire your first estimator and management and your first operations manager. And now you're managing managers of painters or of operations people.
Right.
And so, the problems shift and move, but if the fundamentals are in place, you can run a very small, super profitable home service or commercial service business, make a bunch of money. And you don't have to have 5,000 vans on the road. If you want to have that, that's great. We've got members who are, 25, 26, $30 million. That's what they want to do. But we've also got guys that are making 300,000 with 4 painters, and they're painting 20 hours a week, and they're happy as a lark.
Sure.
And so it all depends on what you want out of your life as far as that goes. I'm tired of talking about me, Tanner. Won't you tell me what's been going on? What's going on with DripJobs? What's going on down in God's country in Florida?
Yeah.
I was glad to see that Ron DeSantis locked that assassin up. He's like, the federal government, my ass, we're going to investigate this ourselves.
It's crazy, man. Florida. I love Florida, man. I love the culture here. I'm from New Jersey, so I didn't spend much time in business there, but generally speaking, it's good, man. Business is fun year round. I think what's great, I'm kind of lucky in a sense that I never have to navigate winter, but I do have to navigate rain, which definitely can throw a wrench in the operations. And it has many times, but it's good, man. I'm actually personally in my own business. We're refining some things. I have a great team. I'm a people guy, so it's all about, servant leadership, building up the people and letting them run the business, and just kind of letting that do its thing so I can focus on DripJobs, which is, my big thing. So a lot of movement, family, got 2 young kids running around, beautiful wife, and a lot going on. A Facebook group, a podcast, a couple other things. So
It's a lot.
it is.
Busy people tend to accumulate more responsibilities, or as the old saying goes, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And because
It's a need.
yes, folks that produce, and then there's the other 80%. Well, what's on the horizon for DripJobs? Like,
Sure.
what do you see? I know that you added production rates not too
Yep.
long ago
Yep. Job
to
costings,
DripJobs.
production.
What
I
else
mean,
is coming down the path?
in terms of vision, it's to create an all-in-one solution that's driven in terms of vision. When you get into the software world, I think you could probably give me a synopsis on the insights from a political background, but from a software perspective, everything's about the vision more than anything else, because everyone's got their heads down working, and you don't have the luxury to miss when it comes to vision. You don't have the feedback loops are really slow. So for me, it's just about refining the vision, making sure that we're staying ahead of the curve, making sure that we're prioritizing things that are going to move the needle, not wasting time on features and things. I mean, for me, it was the last year was all about stabilization, like getting the ship to where it doesn't, it's not sinking in the back, and we got all sorts of bugs, and now it's kind of like instability. While that's happening, we're building the cruise ship. So right now, the version of DripJobs that everyone experiences, that'll be sunsetting hopefully next year at the end of the year, while we build really what I believe to be a data powerhouse that will be one of the most powerful data tools out there that just so happens to be tailored to contractors. So that's my vision for it, to where data becomes an asset more than just an email, more than just a contact name or phone number. It's going to be used as a powerful tool to move the needle. That's the direction a lot of software is going, but to uniquely tailor it to a contractor is our mission.
Well, that's an exciting vision, and the world is your oyster. I mean, there are, I don't know, you've probably looked at the data. All I ever focus on are painting contractors, but I don't know how many home service companies of the size that would actually be your ideal avatar
Dude,
are
it is
out.
amazing. I can't believe it. I mean, we serve Christmas lights, floor contractors, painting contractors, roofing contractors, anyone that takes a customer from a new lead and takes them through a journey, we serve them, and our mission is to create industry specific features like production rates to serve the niches independently to a high level. So there's a lot.
Well, I would close with this for your users. If you are using DripJobs and if you are not using the production rate feature, you are a fool.
Yeah.
Do not be using DripJobs just to plug in a random wild ass guess number. You can't hold your people accountable to a guess.
Yeah.
That the yin and the yang
So
of
true.
pricing are job costing and production rates. That's the whole thing. If you don't have both of those, that's the first thing we start people off with
Yeah.
right after time management.
Yeah. You wouldn't start a coffee shop without a menu, right? like without production rates, there's no menu, and you're leaving everything up to chance.
Oh yes, I always say it'd be
I'm
like
guilty.
if you went to a pizza shop and you said every time somebody ordered pepperoni pizza, you yelled back to the cook and said, "How much are we charging this time?" I mean, nobody does
Yeah.
that, but we do
Nobody
it
knows
in
how
home
many
service.
pieces of pepperoni. Like today the pizza guy was feeling good. He loaded it up. But I was guilty of this, and I actually started using production rates when we built it in DripJobs. I did not understand production rates before I started researching and understanding it, because it's confusing as all get out. It really is.
It is
I think
confusing to a lot of people, and
it's so confusing, but
it has
guys
a
like
lot to
you
do.
bring clarity to it. That's
I
why
think it has a
I
lot to
love
do
you.
with your personality
True.
and how your mind works. Because I have met folks, Tanner, that are fantastic sales, marketing managers, I mean, people that are like, I would consider to be some of the brightest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And then you've had to learn how to use production rates. And 3 months later, they are mentally struggling. Like I'd get on the
Sure.
phone with them 3 or 4 times. And then finally it's like, Helen
Yeah.
Keller and the Miracle
Yeah.
Worker, like water. I get it.
Yeah.
One of the easiest ways I can explain production rates, guys, is if you look on a can of paint,
Yeah.
it says 300 square feet,
Right.
basically, and on a typical
Yeah.
surface.
On a flat, smooth wall.
Flat, smooth wall, 300 square feet. Well, every hour of a painter's time or whatever trade you're in
Yep.
is almost like a gallon of paint.
Right.
And that hour of time only goes so far on any given surface or for any
Right.
given task. And your
Right.
job is to determine, especially up front, is what are the 20% of things we're doing 80% of the time? And let's document that in the field, and let's see
Yeah.
how long it takes us to run a service call. How long does it take us on average to install a new window or to free on charge an AC unit or whatever the thing is that you consistently do? And then now it's like, okay, the labor has a coverage rate just like
Yeah.
the material has a coverage rate, or the linear foot of electrical cord has a coverage rate. And so your job as the owner is to figure out, what we can do. And then the beautiful benefit of using DripJobs and the production rate feature is now you can hold your painters accountable to a verifiable standard that can be proven. And it's often motivating. It's a great recruitment tool for painters or tradespeople or subcontractors.
And salespeople. You don't have to teach them 20 years of experience. You just, hey, here's your calculator. Have at it. It's already proven.
You can't teach that. Cock your head to the left and pull a number out of the air. Like that is unteachable. It doesn't work for you. It's sure as hell ain't going to work for somebody else.
What I started doing, I had this one job where I never counted the corbels on an exterior. I just kind of worked it in as wall space. And we get the color chart back, and he wanted to accent them this deep red color.
Oh, gosh.
3 coats on 30 corbels. And after that, I created a production rate for corbels, and we count them. And we count them, and we put them as a line item. Everything needs a price. And to piggyback on what you said, the auto industry literally eats, sleeps, and breathes on production rates. That's how the auto industry thrives, because every element of a vehicle has a production rate assigned to it. And that's how commission structures are built. That's how the manufacturer, puts out how long things should take to be fixed. So, I mean, you look at vertical industries or different industries, and that's what they're doing.
Well, and I think one of the big reasons that happens in service industries, what I call, you're either a man in a van or a man in a box, right? In the service industry, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor, an attorney, if you're whatever you do. People either come to your box and they bring your car, their body, or whatever they're bringing to you, and you service it, or you get in a van and you go to their box and you service them where they are or their building or whatever. And so one reason I think that the production rates are so predominant in the service in a box business is because it's corporate. There are virtually no corporate, there are a handful, but there are virtually no corporate of any significance home service or commercial service companies out there. Very few. They're all independent because they're harder to manage.
Sure.
But when you're managing people in a box, they're freaking right there. You're you can go walk out at any moment and manage people and watch people.
Right.
But when you're sending 30 people out to 10 different jobs or 15 different jobs, now it's a completely different thing. It's all about independence and self-reliance and self-motivating, self-managing people to a large degree. And that's when it becomes a lot more difficult to get production rates, because now a human has to go out as an admin function and watch it, because when people collect those production rates, I quit doing this, Tanner. I thought for years, I taught develop your own production rates. And boy, was that a fool's errand.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to develop shit. And so now we just give them to them. Here they are. Go use them. Double check them and test them, which 85% of people don't ever do. Hell, they could all be wrong for all they know. Now they're not.
But it's a good baseline.
It's a good baseline. And if you use a baseline production rate from a trusted source, of course, you verify a handful of them to make sure they're not completely. It's still going to be more accurate than a guess. It's going to be more accurate than a guess. You can almost take off-the-shelf production rates from a source you trust. And ours has been developed from our membership plus numbers from a variety of franchises that I've worked
Personal
with over the
experience.
years. And I don't have any personal experience other than my company production rates originally. And I don't even know if those are the best ones, to be honest. But I'd rather trust many of our members' experience or franchise experience than Brandon Lewis's experience, because it's been tested more often and more broadly. But go out there, guys, use that stuff. I mean, and look at the different features in DripJobs that you've got the program, right?
Right.
Let's not, push the bicycle. Let's ride the bicycle.
I like
and a
that.
lot of people, when they have a piece of software like DripJobs, they want to push the bicycle instead of ride it. It's like, okay, it's got 15 features. I'm going to use 2 of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it as a glorified PDF creator or whatever you're using it for.
Yeah, right.
Glorified obviously you have to do all of it, right?
Sure.
But look at the main core things and just ask yourself, is there anything else that's fundamental to my business that this program facilitates, and use it?
Day one of any business, and we'll wrap up here, but day one is pricing. Like, I think you don't have a business unless you have structured pricing. And that's production rates, especially in painting. I think painting is one of the most diverse services, house painting at least, in terms of pricing. I mean, you have unlimited surfaces that require unlimited variables that require different skill sets. Like, look at your room back there. You got ceilings, you got crown molding, you got walls. I mean,
built-in cabinets, those are always
built-in cabinets. I mean, like, imagine doing an estimate for that room and treating it the same way you would any other room. That doesn't make sense. It's going to take longer. So if you like what you're hearing from Brandon, I highly suggest you visit Painters Academy. Legend in the space. Actually, we have a training module from Brandon within DripJobs. So you're going to love that. It's an hour-long training module to learn how to set your hourly rate, to understand production rates at a core level. So give him a holler, Brandon. Thank you, man.
You've been very kind with your time. I appreciate you, Tanner. And if you ever pass through Tennessee, don't do it without letting me know. We'd love to see you.
I will not do that without letting you know. I promise.
All right. Well, take care.